The College Garden City Collegiate Community Service Program is an active and thriving part of our school life. This presentation contains some essential information for everyone who is considering earning their community service credit. Every student in this school is able to volunteer and be a part of our program. Your contact point for all things community service related is Mrs. Reimer. And if you don't know her already, this is Mrs. Reimer. Sometimes with her job, she's a little all over the place, but if you were looking for her, her office is in the hallway between the Commons and the East Building. It's room East 108, and you will see her name on the door. Mrs. Reimer is generally available in B, C, and D slot. Unless she is out on a service outing with student volunteers. If you need to contact her, you can always send her an email, heidi.reimer@sevenoaks.org. So where else can you get information about our community service program? You can follow us on Instagram at CGCC Service. You can also check out the community service bulletin boards in the East Building. Most of all, you'll find all the information you need in your volunteer Google Classroom. More information on the volunteer Google Classroom will follow shortly. The next part of this presentation will address some frequently asked questions about volunteer opportunities. One of the biggest questions is why you should volunteer your time. When you volunteer, you work with others to accomplish change, you improve the lives of others in your community, and you help to create a sustainable, healthy community. You also learn more about yourself, discover new skills, talents, and interests, and you build self-esteem and confidence. As well, you develop job skills, you become part of the working world, you gain valuable references, and you are able to network with others. And finally, you can earn school credit and gain access to scholarships. Students often ask what can be considered as volunteer work, so let's look at some examples. Essentially, volunteer work is unpaid work that helps others. There are lots of opportunities to volunteer if you look around you. There are countless places in the city of Winnipeg that are always in need of volunteers. Here are some museums that have volunteer programs for youth. If you like working with animals, there are several shelters and rescue organizations that also need volunteers. Special events often cannot operate without volunteers. Here are just a few to give you an idea. Nonprofit organizations also depend on volunteers to achieve their goals. There are so many amazing nonprofits in our city that would be happy to have your help. Arts venues and events also need volunteers in order to operate. You might even get to see a free show as a bonus. Sports events and organizations, in particular those tied to a charity or fundraiser, heavily depend on the help of volunteers. Healthcare centers such as hospitals and care homes need volunteers to assist with a variety of tasks. In addition to the places already mentioned, there are many locations within your community where volunteers are needed. Local places where you might already have a connection are a great place to start. Take a look at your skills, interests, and abilities and look for an opportunity to volunteer your time and energy. You can also do some volunteering at school. There are opportunities to help out at GC, at other schools and events in the division, and at service outings organized by Mrs. Reimer. So how can you find out more about volunteer opportunities? You can visit the Volunteer Manitoba website and check out the Opportunities search function. Watch for the Help Wanted ads that Mrs. Reimer posts in the Volunteer Google Classroom. Check out the helpful resources in the classwork section of our Volunteer Google Classroom. You can also watch for ads on our Instagram page at CGCC Service. As well, you can check out the Community Service Bulletin Board in the East Building. Finally, one of the best ways to get connected with great volunteering opportunities is to network with your family, friends, and neighbors. Ultimately, it's your responsibility to organize your volunteering. Mrs. Reimer can help you, but you also have to take initiative for your own volunteering. Here is some key information about the logistics of earning your community service credit at GC. First, you need to enroll in the appropriate volunteer Google Classroom based on your grade and the first letter of your last name. You can see Mrs. Reimer or your ADVO teacher for the appropriate class code to your volunteer Google Classroom. Then you need to get a volunteer hours log sheet from Mrs. Reimer's office. There are always fresh copies in the bottom pocket on her office door. As you volunteer, carefully record your hours and placements on your volunteer hours log sheet. Please make sure the log sheet is clearly and completely filled out and signed by your placement supervisor. Then, scan or take a photo of your completed volunteer hours log sheet. Then, you have to upload the image of your completed log sheet to the Google Classroom in the Classwork section under Forms where it says Submit your hours here. Finally, submit your uploaded log sheet just as you would any assignment for a regular course. When you want to submit more volunteer hours, you just follow the same process and resubmit. Mrs. Reimer will send you a comment via Google Classroom to confirm your newly logged hours. You can find your updated total of logged volunteer hours in the same place where you upload them. So how many volunteer hours are needed to earn the community service credit? You can earn a half credit with 55 hours or a full credit with 110 hours of community service. You can still graduate from GC if you do not have your community service credit. You need 30 of the required credits to graduate in Manitoba, and your community service credit can be one of those credits. Nevertheless, at GC, we encourage everyone to participate in community service. However, if you want to be eligible for most scholarships, some community service is required. You can only earn a maximum of 1 community service credit even if you have hundreds of volunteer hours. You have a total of 4 years to complete your community service credit, grades 9 through 12. Your same volunteer Google Classroom will follow you from one grade to the next. You should start working on your community service credit as soon as you can. There is no limit as to how many volunteer hours you can earn in a year. Ideally, it would be nice if volunteering became a regular part of your life, but some school years may be busier than others. Try to do what you can, when you can. You can also earn volunteer hours through the summer months. Community service isn't like a regular school course, but there is one assignment. Before you can earn your credit, you must complete the final reflection assignment via Google Forms. There are often questions about some unique scenarios that also connect to volunteer work with the school. If you take a family studies course with a practicum, your practicum hours will count towards your family studies credit. If you do more hours than necessary for your practicum, any extra hours can count towards your community service credit. If you take 2 family studies courses with a practicum, your volunteer requirement for scholarships will be covered. The other scenario is the Phys Ed leadership course. You do a lot of volunteering in this course as part of the curriculum. Essentially, this course gives you a community service credit. Your Phys Ed leadership teacher deals with your volunteering for that course, not Mrs. Reimer. To conclude, here are a few final thoughts to take with you as you consider your service to the community. How can one be a good volunteer? It's important to be on time, be present in the moment, and be positive. It's also important to take direction from your supervisors, take initiative to do what needs to be done, and take the work seriously, even if the task seems simple. Communication is key. Check your email, respond to messages, and talk to your supervisor. Treat each and every volunteer placement as an opportunity to grow as a person. And finally, remember that no job is unimportant. Every contribution adds value to the collective goal. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions about the Community Service Program or your own volunteering, please contact Mrs. Reimer. She will be happy to assist you.